I never knew my own brother was ashamed of me until the night I stood outside a mansion in California watching luxury cars enter while I waited in the dark. He told his rich in-laws that I did not exist. He said I was a nobody. He said I was a failure. What he did not know was that the name he tried to hide was the same name written on a billion-dollar company contract sitting inside his father-in-law's office. When I finally walked into that party, every smile froze. Every whisper stopped. And my brother realized too late that hiding a USA girl like me was the biggest mistake of his life. My name is Emily Carter. I was born in Austin, Texas, in a middle-class family that believed more in hard work than appearances. My brother Jason Carter was 3 years older than me, and growing up he was my hero. He protected me at school, helped me with homework, and promised me that one day we would both be successful together. Our parents raised us with strong values and taught us that dignity mattered more than money. Everything changed when Jason went to college in New York. He studied finance, and slowly his world became very different from mine. He started talking about status, power, and elite connections. I stayed in Texas and studied computer systems and business analytics. I was quite focused and not interested in showing off. While Jason chased a glamorous life, I chased skills. Years passed and Jason met Olivia. She came from one of the richest families in California. Her father, Richard Monroe, owned investment firms, luxury hotels, and tech stakes across the USA. Jason fell in love with her lifestyle more than anything else. When they got engaged, he called me after months of silence. "Emily, I am getting married in Los Angeles," he said. "You should be happy for me." I was happy. Truly. I congratulated him and asked when I could meet Olivia and her family. There was a pause. Later he said, "They are very traditional." That was the first red flag. Over time, I realized Jason avoided mentioning me whenever he talked about his new life. On social media, there were photos of luxury dinners, yachts, and private jets, but never a single mention of his sister. When I asked him once why he never tagged me, he laughed it off and said, "You are not active online anyway." The truth came out accidentally during a phone call with our mother. "Emily, your brother, told his in-laws that you live a very simple life and do not like social events," she said gently. That hurt, but I stayed quiet. What my family did not know was that during this time I had built something powerful. After college, I joined a small tech startup. I worked day and night. I invested my savings. I took risks. When the company was acquired, I became one of the youngest female stakeholders in a fast-growing AI logistics firm. I did not post about it. I did not talk about it. I liked privacy. My legal name in business documents was E.M. Carter. Most people in the industry knew me by initials only. Jason never knew. When Jason married Olivia, I was not invited to the main ceremony. He told me it was limited seating and elite guests only. Instead, he invited me to a post-wedding dinner weeks later at the Monroe family mansion. I knew something was wrong, but I still went. He was my brother. When I arrived in California, I rented my own car and wore a simple, elegant dress. Nothing flashy. Just confidence. At the gate of the mansion, security stopped me and asked my name. "Emily Carter," I said. They checked the list and looked confused. One guard whispered to the other and said, "She is not on the family list." I called Jason. He sounded nervous. "Wait outside," he said. "I will come." I stood there while luxury guests walked past me. Some looked at me with curiosity, some with judgment. Jason finally came out. "Why are you here dressed like this?" he whispered angrily. "You invited me," I said calmly. He looked around and lowered his voice. "Listen, Emily, please stay quiet tonight. My in-laws think I am an only child. They believe my family background is very polished. You being here could confuse things." Confuse things. That was the moment my heart cracked. "So you hid me?" I asked. He did not answer. I walked inside anyway. The mansion was full of powerful people. Investors, politicians, celebrities. Everyone wore masks of perfection. Jason stayed far from me, like I was a stranger. Then something unexpected happened. Richard Monroe walked toward me. He stopped and stared at my face. "Emily Carter?" asked slowly. "Yes," I replied. His expression changed. "E.M. Carter," he said. The room went silent. Jason turned pale. Richard smiled and said loudly, "The strategic mind behind our latest billion-dollar logistics expansion is standing in my living room." Every head turned toward me. Jason looked like he was about to collapse. And that was just the beginning. Silence wrapped the room like a heavy blanket. Every conversation stopped. The soft music in the background felt suddenly too loud and then too quiet at the same time. Richard Monroe was still standing in front of me with a glass in his hand, looking at me as if he had just discovered a secret that changed everything. Jason was frozen. His face had lost all color. Olivia looked confused, moving her eyes between her father and my brother, trying to understand what was happening. Richard laughed softly, not in mockery, but in disbelief. "So you're Emily Carter," he said. "Emily Carter." I nodded calmly. Years of boardroom negotiations and pressure had trained me to stay steady even when the world started. "Yes, sir," I said. "It is nice to finally meet you in person." Murmurs spread across the hall. People leaned closer, pretending to sip drinks while clearly listening. Jason took a step forward. "Dad, I mean Mr. Monroe," he stammered. "There must be some misunderstanding." Richard raised his hand, stopping him instantly. "No misunderstanding at all," he said firmly. "I have seen this young woman's name on documents that reshaped how my company moves goods across the country. E.M. Carter is one of the sharpest minds I have worked with in the last decade." Olivia turned to Jason. "You never told me you had a sister like this," she whispered. Jason could not meet her eyes. I watched him struggle and felt a strange mix of sadness and clarity. This was not revenge. This was the truth finally walking into the light. Richard gestured for me to walk with him. "Please, Emily," he said. "Join me. You are family here tonight, whether someone likes it or not." We walked deeper into the mansion. Guests made space for us. I could feel their curiosity burning. People who had ignored me moments ago now studied every step I took. Jason followed at a distance like a shadow of himself. Richard led me to a quieter corner near the fireplace. "I knew from the moment I saw your analysis report," he said, "that you valued substance over spotlight. That is rare in this world." "Thank you," I replied. He looked at me closely. "But I am curious," he continued. "Why did you never mention your family connection when we discussed partnerships?" I smiled gently. "Because my work speaks for itself," I said. "And because family and business are better respected when kept separate." Richard nodded approvingly. Jason finally reached us. "Emily, please," he said quietly. "We need to talk." "Now," Richard said coldly. "You have done enough talking without her presence." Olivia joined us, her eyes filled with confusion and a hint of betrayal. Emily said, "I feel like I do not even know who you are." "That is fair," I replied. "You were never given the chance." She looked at Jason again. "You told my family you were an only child," she said. "You told us your parents had no other responsibilities." Jason swallowed hard. "I wanted a fresh start," he said. "I did not want complications." I looked at him. Was I a complication? Or an embarrassment, I asked. His silence answered everything. The rest of the evening shifted completely. People approached me asking questions about logistics technology, future markets, and innovation. I answered politely, professionally, and confidently. The same guests who once walked past me now treated me with respect. Jason sat alone most of the night. Later, Richard invited me to stay at the mansion. "You are always welcome here," he said. I declined kindly. "I prefer my independence," I said. Before leaving, Olivia stopped me. "Emily, I am sorry," she said. "I judged you without knowing you." I nodded. Judgment often comes from stories we are told, not from people we meet. As I walked out, Jason followed me to the gate. "Why did you never tell me?" he asked quietly. "About your success." I looked at him under the soft lights of the driveway. "Because you stopped asking about my life a long time ago," I said. "You were too busy hiding me to see me." He looked broken. I got into my car and drove away, knowing this was not the end. It was the moment everything truly began. The drive back to my hotel felt longer than it should have. The city lights of Los Angeles blurred past my window, while memories played louder than the traffic outside. I did not cry. Not because I felt nothing, but because I had already mourned the loss of my brother long before that night. What surprised me was how calm I felt. Like something heavy had finally been put down. The next morning, my phone started vibrating nonstop. Missed calls, messages, emails. Some from numbers I recognized from the industry. Some from unknown contacts. News travels fast in elite circles, and last night was unforgettable. One message stood out. It was from Richard Monroe. Emily, I would like to formally invite you to a private meeting this afternoon regarding future expansion plans. I stared at the screen for a moment and smiled. Business never sleeps. When I arrived at the Monroe corporate office later that day, the atmosphere was completely different from the mansion. This was a world I understood. Glass walls, sharp minds, quiet power. The receptionist recognized my name immediately and escorted me upstairs. Richard was already waiting along with 3 board members. "Thank you for coming, Emily," he said warmly. We discussed numbers, projections, infrastructure, and long-term vision. No emotions. No family drama. Just strategy. By the end of the meeting, they offered a partnership expansion that would place my firm at the core of their national operations. I accepted under one condition. Transparency, I said. No shadows, no hidden stories. Richard smiled. Agreed. Meanwhile, Jason's life was unraveling. Olivia confronted him. Her family demanded explanations. The image he had carefully constructed began to crack. That evening, Jason came to my hotel. He looked tired and older somehow. Emily said softly, "Can we talk?" I let him in. He sat across from me and finally said the words he had avoided for years. I was afraid. Afraid of what I asked. Of being seen as not enough, he replied. Your success, your intelligence made me feel small. I thought if they knew about you, they would compare us, and I would lose everything. I listened quietly. So you erased me, I said. He nodded. I did not know how to stand beside you, he whispered. I leaned forward. Jason's strength is not hiding powerful people, it is standing with them. You chose comfort over character. Tears filled his eyes. I am sorry, he said. I believed he meant it. But an apology does not undo damage. It only opens the door to accountability. The following weeks changed everything. Industry articles appeared praising E.M. Carter as one of the most influential strategic minds in USA logistics innovation. Interview requests and invitations followed. I declined most of them. Visibility was not my goal. Impact was. At the same time, Olivia reached out to me. She wanted to meet. We met at a quiet cafe. No luxury, no pretenses. I fell in love with a version of your brother that was not real, she admitted. And I am angry at him. But I also want to know you. I respected her honesty. We talked for hours. About ambition, expectations, and identity. By the end, she smiled sadly. You were never the problem, she said. You were the mirror. That sentence stayed with me. Jason and Olivia's marriage grew strained. Trust once broken is difficult to rebuild. He tried to fix things. To prove himself. But the foundation was weak. One evening, Richard invited me to a formal corporate gala. This time my name was printed clearly on the invitation. Emily Carter, strategic partner. Jason was also invited. He arrived late, avoided eye contact, and stood quietly as I took the stage to speak about innovation, resilience, and integrity. When I finished, the applause was strong and steady. I looked at Jason briefly. He nodded slowly, accepting the truth he could no longer escape. Sometimes the most powerful revenge is not destruction. It is visibility. And my story was still unfolding. After the gala, my life entered a rhythm I had never planned but fully embraced. Meetings, flight strategy sessions, and late nights became routine. My name carried weight now, not because I demanded attention, but because results followed me wherever I went. The partnership with the Monroe Group expanded rapidly, and within months our systems were operating across multiple states. Success changes how people treat you. Old contacts resurfaced. New allies appeared. And some relationships quietly faded. Jason was one of them. We spoke occasionally, but the dynamic was different. He was no longer the confident brother leading the conversation. He listened more, spoke less, and watched carefully as if trying to relearn who I was. One afternoon, he called me unexpectedly. "Olivia is leaving," he said. I closed my eyes for a moment. "I am sorry," I replied honestly. "She said she needs space," he continued. "She says she does not know who she married." I did not respond right away. "Jason," I said finally, "that is something you have to face on your own." He agreed. Meanwhile, Olivia met me one last time before moving out of the Monroe estate. Richard's health was declining, though his mind remained sharp. One evening during a private dinner, he spoke openly. "Emily," said, "legacy is not about blood. It is about values." I knew what he was implying, but stayed silent. "You remind me of the future I hoped to build," he continued. "Fearless, ethical, and grounded." I thanked him deeply but reminded him that leadership must be earned, not given. He smiled. "You have already earned it." Jason heard about these conversations through family whispers. It unsettled him. Not because he wanted power, but because he finally understood what he had nearly destroyed. One night, he came to me with no excuses left. "I do not expect forgiveness," he said. "But I want to change." "Change does not need permission," I replied. "Only consistency." He started therapy, left his position at the Monroe firm, and took a lower role elsewhere. For the first time, he was building something without shortcuts. I watched from a distance. Not out of anger, but wisdom. The final shift came when Richard announced a major national expansion under my leadership. Media attention exploded. Headlines highlighted a woman who rose quietly without scandal or noise. At the launch event, Richard introduced me simply. "This is Emily Carter." She was never hidden. She was simply underestimated. The audience stood. I saw Jason in the back, clapping. Not as a brother seeking validation, but as a man learning humility. Some stories end with confrontation. Mine ended with clarity. But one last chapter remained. Time has a way of softening pain without erasing memory. A year passed and life settled into something strong and balanced. The company flourished across the USA. New systems were launched, jobs were created, and efficiency improved in ways that changed industries. I stayed focused, grounded, and private, just as I always had been. Richard Monroe retired quietly. On his last day in office, he handed me a handwritten note. "You were never meant to be hidden. You were meant to lead." I keep that note in my desk to this day. Jason rebuilt his life slowly. There was no dramatic comeback. No spotlight. Just honest work and steady growth. We spoke more often now. Not as children chasing approval, but as adults learning respect. One evening, he asked me a simple question. "Do you think I can ever be forgiven?" I looked at him. "Forgiveness is not a finish line," I said. "It is a behavior." He nodded understandingly. "We are not what we hide," he said. "We are what we choose to face." That was the moment I knew he had changed. As for me, I finally told my story at a small leadership forum. Not to expose anyone, but to remind people, especially women, that silence does not mean weakness and privacy does not mean insignificance. I ended my speech with a line that stayed with the audience. "If someone tries to hide you, it is only because your light scares them." The applause was not loud, but it was real. Later that night, I received a message from an unknown number. "Thank you for showing me I do not have to disappear to belong." I smiled. That made everything worth it. Sometimes the greatest shock is not revealing who you are. It is realizing you were powerful all along. And that is the story of how my brother tried to hide me from his rich in-laws. And how the world finally saw me.